Okie dokie. Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing very, very well. I'm excited about this video and also podcast. We have Lindie, who's back
Hello.
Who's back. How's it going?
It's good. It's been a while since we spoke, actually.
Been a little bit. I was looking at the last one. The last one was like 13 months ago, actually. So basically just over a year. I think you were wearing a beanie though, and so it was harder. Actually, yeah, you did have Actually, I have it open right now. Just look right now. Looks like yes, you did have long hair. You did. Well, I thought it'd be cool to have Lindie back on. For people watching this on YouTube, I put the link to our first chat, which was a year ago. So if you haven't seen it, you're welcome to go watch it. I think it's quite interesting. And I thought it'd be cool to have Lindie back on and just to do a bit of a follow-up chat from our first one. Oops, my phone is ringing. There we go. Have a follow-up chat from our first one, see what's new, see what her language focuses are, see if she's learned anything since the last time we chatted, etc., etc., etc. So let's start things off with this, just in case there's people here who don't really know who Lindie is, or maybe didn't see our first chat, or who are seeing Lindie for the first time. What is your what's a quick backstory on you? What's your name? Where are you from? What languages are you learning? What do you speak? What are your interests? Give us a quick 2-minute elevator pitch.
Okay, time me. My name is Lindie Buitis, not boats or boaties, Buitis. It's Afrikaans. I am South African, and I work as a UI UX designer here in South Africa. And I have been seriously studying foreign language since my senior year of high school, which is about 5 or 6 years ago. And I've just recently started a few new languages like Hungarian, very difficult, but outside of that, I focus mainly on Asian languages like Korean, Japanese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and so forth.
Nice. And what are your levels in each of those languages? Like how comfortable do you feel?
I would say I'm proficient in Korean and Japanese, and I guess beginner in Mandarin, and super beginner in Vietnamese, and pretty decent, I guess, in French, and still learning Hungarian.
Nice. Interesting. What got you into Hungarian?
I actually had a friend who I met online who was Hungarian, and I thought the language was extremely interesting, and I'd heard how challenging Hungarian was. And I started looking it up a bit, and I really enjoyed the Hungarian music, as usual. And I thought it would be a challenge because Hungarians like to say it's the hardest language in the world and it's super difficult to learn, but I wanted to see if I could prove them wrong. It really is difficult though, especially the sentence structure, because it's very fluid. You can kind of swap words around, and they say they don't have a sentence structure. But when you say something, they're like, no, actually you have to say it this way around. So it's a bit tricky. Pronunciation is very interesting. And I also just wanted to branch out from outside of Asian languages and see how it feels to study a non-Asian language for a while.
Yeah, I find it, and maybe this is just my experience, but when I first branched out, for me anyway, it's from Romance languages. So I first did French and Spanish were like the first languages I studied that were not like a mother tongue or something I learned at home. And from there, when I started to do Mandarin, I felt at the beginning anyway, it almost felt quite challenging, or more challenging than I expected, because I had no base to go off of. There's nothing I could hang on to or latch onto that was similar in Mandarin compared to French or Spanish. Did you feel that at all in Hungarian?
I did, in the sense of most of the languages I learned to have a different script. And it was kind of strange to go back to a script that is Latin with a few diacritics. The grammar is very, very different. Actually, the one thing that was interesting for me was the conjugation of verbs again, like French, where it changes depending on the pronoun. Korean and Japanese and Afrikaans doesn't have the verb changing based on the pronoun. So I had a bit of experience with verb conjugations in French, so it wasn't foreign, but it was strange to have to memorize verb tables again.
Okay. And is it like French where there's lots of exceptions to the rules, or is it pretty consistent?
There are a few, not a lot. Yeah, there's a few.
Nice, that's good. Do you, I guess, how far do you want to go with your Hungarian?
I would want to be fluent. The more I read up about Hungary, the more I want to visit. And I'm actually considering maybe taking a 2-week intensive language course at one of the universities over the summer, so maybe next year, just to really immerse. I think it's like 6 hours of classes a day for 2 weeks, so no tourist time, which sounds like a dream to me, to be honest. So perhaps I'll take it very far. I don't want to give up. Especially all the nice Hungarian people I've met. And I've actually been contacted by Hungarian national news to be on the news. And I've been featured on a few Hungarian websites. So it feels a little not great to just give up when I guess you could say I've made it this far. So I do want to continue.
And why have you been put on the news and everything? Why have they wanted you on?
So I put out a video where I first started learning Hungarian, like day 1 of Hungarian, where I just played around with my radio app and tried reading some verbs and just practiced the pronunciation. And then I put out a video 2 months later to track my 2-month progress. And people were very impressed at the amount I could learn within 2 months. Obviously, I haven't really touched Hungarian since the 2 months, which was in January or December. I've been very busy rather on Japanese and stuff. So my Hungarian hasn't really improved, but between the span of beginner to little more beginner in 2 months, it did improve quite rapidly. And I think that impressed people.
Got it. I assume it's a language I assume it's a language that most people don't learn.
Yes, I think people would rather learn it if they're moving to the country for work or something. But I mean, polyglots like Alex Rowling speaks Hungarian as well. So,
but even then, when you look at like the normals, the quote unquote normals, right? Like people that are not in the language learning community, which is basically the whole world except for maybe 1,000 of us or whatever the number is. I don't know the exact number, but the thousands of us, maybe not the 1,000, but even then, like, it's just not. If I just stopped a random engineer on the street, like they'd be like, Hungarian, like why? Like they I think it's not a language where I go, I'm learning Spanish, and they go, oh, okay, right. Yeah. Instead of Hungarian, they'd be like, Hungarian, and I bet you in Hungary, I bet you it's similar. I would imagine. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that it's similar. Like you're learning our language. Are you moving here? No. Why then?
I did get a lot of feedback from Hungarians saying, wow, thanks for learning our language. And you wouldn't really get that from a French or a Spanish person, like, wow, thank you so much for learning our language, because it's kind of standard to learn those 2 Romance languages. Yeah, I guess it differs from person to person as well.
Have you ever had it where someone has the opposite reaction, and not necessarily like thank you for learning your language, but more of a reaction of let's say genuine surprise mixed with almost a level of slight judgment of like, but like with no use to it. Like they're not judging you, but they don't understand. They really don't understand. So it's more than it's confusion. It's almost bewilderment. Have you ever had that?
I don't think I've had any negative reactions in the sense of why on earth would you learn our language, but more surprise, like I would never have expected you to speak our language. But the interesting thing that happens, especially with Koreans, is sometimes their brain just doesn't comprehend that you are speaking their language, and it is too strange for them that a foreigner is speaking their language, that they cannot accept that you can converse in Korean, and they will switch over to English, no matter how fluent you are. And sometimes they will have completely broken English. And then I'll reply to them in Korean because I cannot understand their English, but they will refuse to speak to me in Korean. And it will be this broken English, Korean, English, Korean, until I just give up and switch back over to English. Have you ever had that happen?
No, not necessarily, but I have had it where, or rather I've heard of people that have gone. I'm trying to think of what it was. It was one person. What language was it? It might have been someone trying to learn Dutch, or it might have been someone trying to learn Gaelic, or like what was it? I don't remember what language. It was a European language, but it wasn't like a French or Spanish. Anyway, there's someone I was talking to, and they were telling me that because they were learning that language, when they would go to the country, they'd be laughed at, but not in a negative way. Not in the sense of ha ha ha, you sound funny, but laughed at like, oh, you poor thing. Don't you know all of us speak English? Like,
oh, I hear what you say.
Yeah, and the person had to explain like, oh no, I just like languages, so I thought it'd be cool to learn yours. Then they'd be like, oh, okay, well, let's speak in whatever it was, Dutch or whatever language it was, right? Or like Swedish, or maybe it might have been Swedish actually. I wish I remembered.
Because English is very good in Scandinavia.
Yeah, so it might have been that, but anyway, it wasn't negative. It was just more like people thought they were trying to be, the people in the country thought they're trying to be culturally polite by like speaking, but it wasn't that at all. So that's why they're laughing like, oh, no need to do that here because we all speak English super fluently. Yeah. And then the person my friend had to explain like, oh no, I just was interested in your language, so I'm trying to learn. They're like, oh, okay, sure, let's practice then. Like we can speak in whatever language.
And people on the receiving end of that can interpret it in two ways. Either, wow, that's really nice of them for being accommodating towards me, the learner, or on the other way around, like, don't they appreciate how hard I've worked? Why are they, ignoring the fact that I've learned their language? I get it a lot with business emails, like from the Korean embassy, for example. They know I speak Korean. They've spoken to me in Korean in person, but when they write me an email, it'll be in broken English.
Yeah. Well, it brings up like, my personal favorite thing about learning languages, the reason I do it is that I like people, and I like meeting people from different parts of the world and understanding how they think, how they act, it just fascinates me. And actually, more specifically, I like how individual humans act, and I like that language allows me to meet someone from a completely different part of the world. And it's super fascinating sometimes to see that, wow, even though you're from the other side of the world, you're just like my friend Joe. Like you're, or sometimes it'll be like you can see how a culture influences. Like it's really fascinating, and that's something that's quite like that to me feels like I could almost do like an anthropological experiment on it, or an anthropological study almost on it, where it's looking at, well, in this country, to navigate the country properly and to fit into the culture, it's actually not about being super fluent. It's about understanding what scenarios do you speak in English and what scenarios do you use blah, 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 blah language to be able to navigate the relationship, because the expectation of the other person is that you don't speak in Korean or whatever language.
Right.
And so how do you use it? Like maybe it's not you speak in Korean all the time. Maybe it is you speak in English 90% of the time, and the Korean is really only when it's to bridge a communication gap, or like it just fascinates me. It sounds so like
that is interesting. Sometimes I get thrown off by people's reactions. I am actually quite shy, and when there's too much sudden attention on me, it makes me uncomfortable. So if I start talking Korean to someone, maybe if I'm ordering at a restaurant, like today, I was actually at a Korean restaurant and I ordered noodles, and the waitress was not Korean. Please, could you make my noodles not spicy at all? No spice. Cannot eat spice.
You said that,
Came
right?
back, yeah. Okay. And the noodles were so spicy. I could not eat it. And then the ajumma, the lady who works in the kitchen, came out, and then I just said in Korean, because I know she doesn't speak English. I said, I'm so sorry. I asked for non-spicy noodles. These are too spicy for me to eat. And instead of really discussing the noodles, she was like, oh, your Korean is so great. Where did you learn Korean? Oh, I'm so surprised. Which is a compliment. That's very sweet of her to say. But then all the attention is on me and my language skills, when actually I just spicy. And then everyone in the restaurant is looking at me, but she can't speak English. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating thing. Like it's interesting where, like, I wonder if you would have almost gotten your desired outcome of fixing your noodles if you walked up and said in a very thick accent, like, noodles, spicy, no like, spicy, and like you don't speak Korean like that. But then they might think, oh, and then she wouldn't have made, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that because I surprised her with my good Korean skills, I got my meal for free.
Okay.
So I guess if I had been like, oh, noodle, no, then I guess she would just be like, what? No, go for it. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've experienced it where, actually, I guess in Mandarin I've had that experience where I'll speak in Mandarin and they'll reply in English.
Oh, really? I found the opposite. When I speak Mandarin, they will just never speak English and they'll go off with fluent Mandarin.
So my experience with it has been with people that speak English well, if they speak English or even decently well.
Yes.
Like I'm thinking specifically if I go to like an event that's like, whatever, like an event, I can't think of a good example, but like, actually, here's a good example. In my own city, this is the most recent example. I run a lot of events for language learners, and we'll often have a lot of Chinese people, and they're basically attending because I have like an online group of people that are interested in Chinese culture or who speak / are learning Mandarin. And so they'll come and they'll say, oh, you're learning Mandarin? I'll say, yeah, I'm learning. They'll say, oh, let's practice. And I'll say, okay. Then we'll talk for 2 minutes in Mandarin. And then at one point, if there's ever a moment, there's like one moment where like maybe I missed something, I'm like, oh, can you say that again?
English. Then it's English, yes. English. Yeah.
And then it's switched. Whether it's because I don't know and that it fascinates me because I really am interested in the psychology behind it. Is it that they, and it could be anything. It could be they want to make it easier for me. It could be that they think, oh, he doesn't speak Mandarin. Okay, switch to English. It could be that they don't want to go through the challenges of speaking slower and they don't want to do that. They don't know how. Like, there's a million things it could be. But it's still, I don't know. I find it interesting.
What I would do if I was in the native speaker's case, I've met a few people, non-South African people who speak really good Afrikaans. And I think it's just, you can't get in that person's head and you don't actually know what their level is. They may be having a pretty fluent basic conversation, but as soon as it gets a bit more advanced, you don't know how well they speak the language. And it's a lot easier to switch to a language that you both are fluent in. Trying to think, yeah, there was a Korean guy at church once who spoke fluent Afrikaans, and my mind just could not comprehend it. I think I'm actually understanding why Korean people react the way they do when I speak Korean. If I think back to how I reacted when Korean guy spoke Afrikaans, it's just, this is like too good to be true. It's too much, can't believe it. And then I guess you don't believe it, and then you just switch back to the mutual language.
Yeah, because you're not used to it. We're all creatures of habit, and so we just fall into our old.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's a different scenario, but this reminded me of this for some reason. So my family is Gujarati, right? From Gujarat in India, and I speak decent Gujarati. It's not bad at all, but there's obviously a lot I don't know. I have a slight accent. I make some grammar mistakes, but overall, in terms of if you were to look at, let's say if the average person were to just listen to me speak in Gujarati and see me communicate and just kind of see that roll out, they'd be like, yeah, you speak, like, yeah, you speak really well. Like, they wouldn't, right? But it's interesting because when I was in India this year, earlier, I would speak with people in India, obviously, in Gujarati, and they'd be like, so what are you doing here? And I'd be like, oh, I'm actually studying Gujarati and learning Gujarati. And they'd be like, why? You speak, for someone who's not born and raised in India, for someone who's born in Canada and just kind of visits India from time to time and speaks with family, like that's like, can you get any better? Like, can you get better? Like, they just don't, they think how I speak is as good as it's going to get. And they're like, oh, that's already really good. And it's just interesting. It's almost this reaction of like, they actually not discourage me, but they almost don't see the point at all of studying Gujarati.
That baffles me a little too, to be honest. If you are, it baffles me a little too. If you are proficient, did you just want to improve like advanced?
Yeah, it's more that I feel weird saying that I speak English, French, Spanish better than I speak my own mother tongue, like Gujarati.
I see.
And it bothers me that I have a weird thing where if I go somewhere, they have to, if they were blind, and they only heard me speak, I want them to not know I'm not from there. I'm obsessed with that. I don't know why, but it really, actually I do know why, it's a long story, but that's a big thing that matters to me. And so when I go to India, it drives me up the wall. I want to like break pens and like, even now thinking about it, I want to like snap this pen. Thinking about how like I can like picture, like literally I'm picturing like 3 or 4 people now that I met in India, and they'd be like, oh, you look like you're from here. And the second you open your mouth, or the second you start talking, you know you're not from here. And I go, I'm gonna like break everything in this. Like I get so angry.
Yeah.
And
I also have this. Yeah. So I also have this thing with, sometimes I'm too scared to speak Japanese because, strangely enough, my Japanese accent sounds Korean. I don't know how that happens, but I get that a lot. And occasionally, if I focused a lot on Japanese, Korean people will say my Korean sounds like Japanese. So that's frustrating for me. I think getting the accent down is even harder than grammar and vocab.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's one of those things. So I don't know. It's I always figure it out. I always end up figuring it out. It's just a phonetic thing. It's just understanding the alphabet works like this, but people actually do this, right? Or actually, even more accurately, I should be, the alphabet works like this. Do I think the alphabet works the way it actually works? Like I might think that this character or this letter is pronounced like this way, but when native speaker will actually go, wait, no, it's not. And I'm like, wait, have I been saying that sound wrong all this time? And then it gets fixed, right? It's either that.
I'm sorry. Do you want to finish? Okay.
Oh, I just said it's either that, or it's that the alphabet is set a certain way, but then when people are speaking, they change it because of whatever reason.
Yes, and I think that's why audio input from the beginning is so important, and people actually recommend just listening to the language for the first few days or weeks of study, because practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And you could be practicing the wrong thing, especially if you're a self-study learner with no language partner. Like I don't have anyone near me who speaks Hungarian, so listening to the radio for the first few days helped me establish my accent a bit better.
And I think that's the thing. Like that's something that's really different, because when I started to like post content and really be more part of like language learning communities, even though I was interested in languages before realizing there's a community, one thing I noticed is quite different is that I have always used plenty of other people when I'm learning. I do self-study, I definitely do, but I always have a heavy influence of other people, whether it's teachers, whether it's native speakers that I travel to, like when I travel to country, whether it's online videos, there's so much other people. And I usually want them to be like, I want to be able to interact with them, because I want to see their reactions to what I do. So I think a good example, we were talking about I don't know if we were recording. No, we weren't recording yet, but before we were recording, we were talking about my Mandarin degree and how I'm going back to school for Mandarin. And I told you I'm probably not going to like my classes. I'm probably not going to enjoy them. Most likely not, even though I'll still enjoy the overall university experience. The one big reason why I'm going to take the classes is not because of what the teacher teaches us from the textbook, more because I'm going to observe what the teacher actually does when they speak, unconsciously. That I will just copy.
Very interesting. Never thought of that.
So that's kind of one reason why I'm going to take it, because she'll tell us, she'll like, I think the best example, do you speak Spanish or no?
I can understand a bit, but I can't speak.
Sure. Or I'll give you, let's get you speak some Mandarin. I'll give you Mandarin example, actually. It'd be like, it's like, sometimes if you have a word, right? And when you look at the pinyin, when you look at the letters, it's set a certain way. So if you take a word, like any word ending in N, I'm really excited to take my class in Mandarin phonetics, because I don't know if you notice, anytime a word ends in an N, when in pinyin in Mandarin, you sometimes don't pronounce that N. Have you caught that before? Or
I'm trying to think of an example, but
like na, right? Like a different N than in English. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I don't care if a Mandarin speaker says it's the same, because it's not the same. I will like bet my life that it's not the same, but they don't know it, right? So they don't teach that, because they'll be like, N is like in English. And for all intents and purposes, it is like in English, but there's circumstances usually I'm finding when it's a vowel N ending, but I'm excited to take the class to figure out what the exact pattern is, because I haven't fully figured it out. But sometimes N, and I noticed that I was laughing at my teacher. She stuck her tongue out when she said an N. She goes,
Wow.
like nan, right? For example. And I go, interesting, right? And it's just fascinating, right? They didn't teach me that, but I'm paying attention to what the teacher's doing, right? And I'll be like, why is she doing that? Is she the only one? Okay, let me pay attention more, right? Or another one with like the eyes in Mandarin. Some will say in like
that's what I was gonna say. It's like like yin. It's like yi.
Yeah, there's a rule behind it that I haven't figured out fully yet, but there is something going on there, because sometimes the I is pronounced one way, and otherwise, and some people will, and it depends on the person where they're from too, they will say it a different way, right? But they're not going to teach you because they don't know. They don't even know that because they haven't realized they're doing it. That's the stuff that fascinates me, and that's the stuff that will like distinguish if someone, even if you speak really well, right, and super fluently. Like my Gujarati is quite strong. My vocabulary, there's some gaps, but it's quite strong. It's certain things like that. Some letters that are mispronounced. Some like rhythm problems, right? Little things that you learn unless you just observe people.
Yeah. Also, back on Hungarian, the intonation, I always get that wrong because it's different from languages I usually learn. I think you put the what's the word in English? Just think off like the focus, the intonation focus. You put it on the first part of the word.
Stress?
Yes, the stress. Okay. That's the word. And I think in other languages I've learned it's usually near the end. Yeah, so stuff like that, which you'd only be able to pick up either from listening or spending time with a lot of native speakers. Also to pick up on the small nuances, like do they use their hands or not, or
totally,
and filler words as well. Like in Chinese, it's naga, naga, or raho. You know, they don't say
Yep, totally. Do you find you catch those naturally, or is it difficult for you?
Filler words?
Let's say elements of the language that are not necessarily taught. So whether it's filler words, whether it's the intonation, whether it's body language, whether it's, you know.
I wouldn't say it's difficult if you have enough input. So, for example, if you're watching Korean dramas, you'd very quickly be able to pick up on their extreme intonation, you know, the way the words go up and down, for example, and you know, the actions people do while they talk. But if you're just learning from a textbook and your only reference of audio is the textbook audio, which is often very awkward and professional and enunciated, you will sound awkward. You're not going to sound natural. So the more external inputs you have in a natural context, the easier it is to learn that. I wouldn't say it's challenging at all if you have the right environment.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, I think it depends on the person too. I think it would, and I'm just speculating now because I'm not actually sure. But I'm wondering, like, I'm thinking of, for example, my mom. She would never ever catch auditory nuances in a language because her ears just don't work that way. Right? Yes. She might catch visual nuances, right?
Okay.
But she might not catch because her ears just are not. She's just not. It's not a strong suit for her. Right? Like I'm just wondering now. I'm just thinking out loud if maybe some people would pick up certain nuances easier than other nuances, and unless they're taught how to pick up the other type of nuance, they wouldn't be able to naturally.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you. I get that with a lot of my students when I tutor. There are some people who snap the accent like this and they sound super native, and other people I say the word over and over and they just cannot get that different way to pronounce something. They're stuck in their native language pronunciation. They can't do that switch in their mind. But then the people who might struggle with the pronunciation might be excellent at the grammar and handwriting, whereas the people who can speak really well might have chicken scratch handwriting. So I would say it depends not only on the person, but also your environment.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. It's funny though, one thing I've noticed I've been doing a lot more. I've been working with people a heck of a lot more on accent reduction lately. I've done it a fair bit in the past as well, but just lately I've been just had more of that in my schedule, my teaching schedule. And it's one thing I noticed is that they have to, I didn't realize this before, but people, and maybe this is my experience, people don't hear a sound how it's supposed to be heard.
That's very, very true. Yes.
They hear it through the filter of whatever they speak, and I didn't realize that before.
That Yanni and Laurel thing as well kind of touches on that. Did you see that?
I did.
Yeah. What did you hear?
The first time I heard Yanni,
and
then I watched a video of the science of what's happening, of how some people listen to higher frequencies naturally and some hear lower, and I thought, oh, perfect. Then I could choose, because I could just choose to. It's so weird, like, and I felt like a superhero, because I would be like, I'm gonna listen to the low frequency, and I'd hear Laurel, and I'd be like, I want to listen to high frequency now, and I hear Yanni. I could just switch. It was really interesting.
Yes. Huh.
What did you hear?
I'm trying to think. I think I heard Yanni. No, Laurel. Laurel was the one I heard the most.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think we've been going for a good half hour, I think. Yeah, going for a good half hour. Yeah. Let's, we can wrap it up there. Well, people who are watching this on YouTube, links for Lindie's website, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, etc., are all in the description. Podcast people, I'll put them in like the podcast description section, so you guys can see that there. Any parting thoughts, Lindie?
What languages are you going to study this upcoming week?
Actually, funny you mentioned that. We can probably finish on this note. I got a cool idea. Let's do a question of the day. First time ever. Question of the day. Okay. What languages are you studying this upcoming week? And then I'll answer it. I'll answer it as well. Mandarin's a big one. Actively Mandarin. I'm doing a 30-day Mandarin challenge right now, actually, in my Facebook group. And that's actually a 30-day just vocabulary challenge. You can join with whatever language you're learning, but for me, it's Mandarin. And then passively Gujarati. So my passive, it's the only way I study Gujarati right now. I used to take classes with an amazing tutor, but I just kept skipping her class and canceling it and being an on-call student, so I stopped taking lessons. I was wasting too much money on it. But the only way I study Gujarati now is I follow like a bunch of Instagram accounts and just different, and not Gujarati teaching accounts, but just accounts for comedy and whatever. And I just read meme pages. I'll read the memes. I'll look up the new words. I'll listen to people's videos. That's all I do. So okie dokie. Well, thank you for being on, and I'll end the stream here.
Oh, it was wonderful to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Likewise.